learning in interesting and novel contexts. Thank you to everyone near and far who is joining us today. While I would much rather be experiencing this event with you in person, we are trying to look at the bright side of having virtual opportunities to join together. In this case, I'm very happy to welcome not only students, faculty, and staff to this event, but also mentors, alumni, parents, grandparents, siblings, friends, loved ones, supporters, and most importantly, cheerleaders, all of whom have helped our students to succeed in these immersive experiences. The students who are here today, the students who have shared their experiences in other formats, and other Drew students who are being represented by this sampling have built these immersive experiences into their undergraduate and graduate educational experiences, because this is what it means to be a Drew student. These experiences personify Drew's mission of providing a challenging and individualized education shaped by a culture of mentoring and thoughtful engagement with the campus community and the world beyond our campus. One of the greatest privileges I have of being the provost at Drew is being able to interact directly with our students about their incredible work. I'm always impressed by the interesting and creative ways that they are taking advantage of distinctive Drew experiences and utilizing those to develop key skills and competencies that prepare them for their professional lives once they graduate. Today, we will all hear from 10 Drew students about their individual immersive experiences across a number of different categories. Our Trek programs that encourage students to travel, rethink, explore, and connect. Their roles in student leadership, on-campus employment, in community-based learning courses and civic projects, with internships and with research. There are also 9 additional presentations that are available for viewing at the Immersive Experiences Fair webpage that you can access by going to launch.drew.edu/events. And there are countless other students who are able to share similar stories the next time you have an opportunity to connect with them. And I hope that you will have that opportunity soon. For our newest students and our current students, many of whom are here today to learn about immersive experiences that are available to them, we hope that you use this opportunity to think deeply about what immersive experiences you are planning to complete while you're a student at Drew. And this should also be a lesson not to be shy about asking your peers to share their experiences with you. As you will see today, they will be happy to give you all of the details, and you will be the beneficiary of their guidance and their mentorship. Before we begin, I want to share a little bit about the format of today's event. I'm going to be introducing each of our student speakers, and we will then be able to watch a short video that they have prepared where they describe their immersive experience. Immediately after each student's video plays, there will be a live question and answer session with the presenter. If you are on a laptop or a desktop computer, you may use the chat feature throughout the presentation to ask any questions you have for the presenter. My colleagues will be monitoring the chat and will be prepared to ask these questions of the presenter once their video concludes and before we go on to the next speaker. Using the chat feature is only available to you if you're on a laptop or desktop. So if that's not the case and you're able to make that switch, please consider doing so now. The question and answer session is your chance to interact and engage directly with the students and to hear more about their experiences. And we want this to be a lively and informative conversation. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker today, and we will begin. So our first student to present will be Teresa Valancourt, who will be talking about her New York City Trek experience.
Hi everyone, my name is Teresa Valancourt. I am a senior at Drew University with majors in international relations, economics, and French. And today I'll be telling you about my experience with the social entrepreneurship semester. This previous spring, I participated in the social entrepreneurship semester, where I learned about different types of nonprofits and social change or social mission-driven organizations. Throughout the semester, we had a number of guest speakers who would talk about the social missions that their organizations or nonprofits strove to achieve. These guest speakers included the president of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a group of Met Opera musicians, and my personal favorite, Jerry from Ben & Jerry's. I also had the opportunity to work as a community partner to a small nonprofit called Refugee Outreach International, or ROI. ROI is a small nonprofit based out of Chatham, New Jersey, who works to provide adult refugees with access to English language classes. This semester had a number of impacts on me. However, two key ones are the facts that I was able to gain many valuable future job contacts. This was clearly enabled through our multitude of guest speakers. I was also able to develop professional writing and communication skills. This certainly was attributed to my work with ROI. And now a community impact from this experience can clearly be seen in the work with ROI. My group and myself were able to help ROI in formalizing their ongoing program, the LIVE initiative, or Language and Immersive Virtual Education for Refugees, which provides adult refugees with low literacy in their native tongue access to online English language classes that are tailored to fit these unique needs. We were also able to help ROI achieve their goal of applying for a grant to finance the LIVE initiative. This experience helped me develop a number of transferable skills, in particular from working with my group on writing a grant and boilerplate text for ROI, which would allow them to apply for future grants very easily. This certainly developed critical collaboration, oral and written in communications. This also can be seen from our transfer in the spring semester to virtual learning. My group certainly had to become very creative with how we were able to collaborate with numerous time zone differences, including a 12-hour time zone problem that we had to work through. However, these skills are certainly transferable to current and future employment. We were also able to further develop ROI's program, which definitely expanded my problem-solving, creative, and critical thinking capacities. This absolutely can be seen in our work with formalizing the program, and by that I mean when we had first begun working with ROI, the program was not yet at a place where it was able to be, where it could be applied to a grant. For example, there was no title to it, so my group and myself worked together to come up with the name, the LIVE Initiative. Now, following the social entrepreneurship semester, as I'd mentioned before, there are many valuable contacts, and I have been and will continue to be in contact with these previous guest lecturers about future employment and internship opportunities, and more importantly, to have the opportunity to learn more about how to enter into the nonprofit field, which is something I'm very interested in. 3 ways I can achieve these goals is by first taking the skills I have acquired from working with ROI to future internships or jobs. For example, these skills include being able to write a grant, which is certainly transferable into future employment. The second is I will continue to reach out to contacts from the social entrepreneurship semester about internship or job opportunities. The third and final plan is to utilize my knowledge of nonprofit and social change organization structures and operational processes to increase opportunities and successful interactions at these organizations and to future employment. I hope I have been able to answer any of your questions about the social entrepreneurship semester. Thank you.
Excellent. So excited to be here with all of you. My name is Megan McHugh. I am the Director of Student Activities, and I'm going to be helping to moderate our Q&A with our presenters today. So I do just want to mention a little reminder. I know Jessica mentioned it earlier, but if you are joining us now, that We will be accepting questions in the live chat portion of the web page that you're looking at. It's directly underneath the video that you're watching, and we do have a little bit of a lag. So, get those questions in. If you want to ask them while the video is happening, feel free. We will be able to grab them in real time and then ask our presenters. So, Teresa, are you ready for our first question of today?
Absolutely.
Okay. So tell us, what has been the most challenging thing about writing the grant, and how did your classes at Drew help you prepare for that task specifically?
Well, overall, I'd say writing the grant itself was hard, every component of it. However, probably the biggest challenge my group and I faced was figuring out how to formalize the grant, to formalize the nonprofit itself, I mean. ROI remains a very small nonprofit, but a lot of the work it had been doing hadn't necessarily been transferred into a comprehensible format that could be understood by potential investors, such as through saying and developing a physical budget. So being able to see on an Excel sheet how well you're doing or where you would like some room for improvement. That was probably one of the biggest challenges my group faced. And especially with the time difference we ended up facing, one of my group members had to return home to Malaysia. We ended up trying to figure out how to communicate and figure out how to write a budget across multiple different time zones, as well as contact the head of ROI, Rena. So that was certainly a huge challenge that we all faced.
Thank you so much for sharing. It sounds like you've got some really strong transferable skills that you are going to take with you beyond your time at Drew. We do have another question from one of our viewers. This is a fun one. So while you were in New York City, did you get to see any opera performances or test any ice cream with some of the contacts that you made?
Oh, I love this question because yes to both. Well, not necessarily, sorry. My personal favorite speaker we had Jerry from Ben and Jerry's come speak to us. And he actually, even though at this point in the semester we were still on campus, he'd actually conducted a Zoom call with us. And my professor had brought in a bunch of different Ben and Jerry's ice creams. So we were talking to him while eating ice cream, and I will not lie, it was a dream come true. And in regards to seeing operas, we went to the Met Opera and did an intense backstage tour of it, which was incredible. And while we actually did not get to see any operas, this ended up being the final class, the final Thursday before spring break, and following that, we transferred virtual. So while we didn't get to see any operas, my group, we were divided into two groups, actually had a pretty cool experience where we happened to walk into one of the rehearsal rooms. They were on a break, and we started speaking with some of the people just sitting in chairs. And all of a sudden our tour guide goes, this is an incredibly famous opera singer, Joyce D. I'm forgetting how to pronounce the rest of her last name, and I'd prefer not to butcher it, but who was all like, let's get them tickets for the opera. And we were like, yeah. And she's like, what about tonight? And we're like, oh no, it's spring break tomorrow. But if she remembers, we will take you up on that when things get back to normal.
Oh, I love that. And I'm very, very jealous about your ice cream experience. All right. So we've got time for, I think, one last question for Teresa. And it looks like we're going to see, okay. Tanya asks, what kind of research was necessary to determine which foundation might fund the grant?
Oh, that was a ton of intensive research. We had to compile multiple lists of different types of banks, charities, foundations, anything that could potentially be appealing to ROI. Specifically, we were compiling based on previous grant history, such as, do they donate to adult refugee-based literacy programs? Do they donate, that's very narrow, but you start broader at first. However, getting it to that more narrow and specific focus makes it way more likely that ROI could be given a grant or even have a chance of obtaining funding from that particular source.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. That was so interesting to hear about your experience, and we all could live vicariously with your ice cream story. So thank you for that. Our next speaker today will be Jordan Smith, who will be talking about her student leadership role in new student orientation.
Hi, my name is Jordan Smith. I am a senior at Drew studying theater arts, and today I'm going to be talking about my experience as orientation committee coordinator. So a brief summary about the position. When I first arrived at Drew a few years ago, I was immediately drawn to the committee as they helped move us into our dorm rooms, and they were so helpful and supportive, and I wanted to give that help and support back, so I applied to be on the committee the first chance I got. And then my third year at Drew, I became the student co-coordinator for the orientation committee. So in that position, my duties were to lead a group of about 40 student leaders to success in interactions with the new students and their families. And in doing that, we are helping to make those crucial connections between students and welcome the incoming class each year. A little bit about the personal impact it's had on me. I've learned the required skills it takes to be a strong leader, skills such as communication, teamwork, delegation, problem solving, as well as how to connect with others in a fast-paced environment. This experience also allowed me to make so many amazing friends and memories that are life-changing. And it's had a really big impact on the community as well. It helps the community of new students each and every year with their transition to college, which can be scary and uncomfortable, but we're there to give them a friendly face. And then the new student involvement in clubs, classes, and events is important to all of the Drew community for a thriving, successful student body. So after witnessing firsthand how approachable and helpful the student leaders are, the new students feel more comfortable with all members of the Drew community, and their involvement is so crucial and cherished at Drew. On the right, you'll see a list of transferable skills that I've learned through this experience. In this experience, I have planned and executed fun and educational events and activities for both the committee and new students to participate in. So that's using some of my creative thinking skills. When we ran into issues due to the pandemic, I was challenged to use problem-solving skills to rework our plans. And working virtually all summer long taught me how to work remotely and communicate through technology. So this past summer was a really challenging one, but I learned a lot of important skills like digital proficiency and problem solving. Virtually or in person, I regularly communicated with students and parents and families each year. And then the committee's diversity training and emphasis on inclusion helped me to actively engage in conversations and exercises on differences between peers and our backgrounds, which is super important. And that's the last skill, engaging differences. And I've learned a lot more than just those ones, but those are the big ones that stick out to me and that I wanted to talk to you about today. And then my follow-up plan. So the flexibility, reliability, commitment, and dedication I've crafted during this 4-year-long experience are valuable and indispensable. Because of my experience on the orientation committee, I've gained so much confidence to apply to my career in theater. Some action items that I'm going to take. Step 1, incorporate this student leadership experience into my theater major by successfully directing Drew's first radio play. Basically, I am directing a radio play. I'm currently in rehearsals for that. It's called Chamber Music, and it will be ready in November. And that is a student ensemble of about 11 students, and I have to lead them in collaboration similar to my position on the orientation committee. Step 2 is to meet with the Career Center to improve my resume and cover letter skills in order to acquire the strongest materials possible for job searching. The Career Center is a great opportunity to take advantage of. They are a great resource, and I'm definitely going to use them as graduation is coming up soon and I need to think of what next. And then finally, apply to creative jobs and environments that encourage building strong relationships as a foundation for working with a team, as well as the support to also work as a strong independent woman, actor, director, and creator when necessary. I'm really excited for the future and feel so well-rounded with my experience from the orientation committee. I encourage getting involved on campus because the opportunity I took as a freshman 4 years ago has taught me so many valuable skills and lessons, and it feels good knowing I made an impact on other students' lives as well as my own. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of them.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jordan. I can speak from personal experience working closely with Jordan over the last year in her role as the orientation student coordinator, co-coordinator, that this year has brought a lot of twists and turns with it when it comes to welcoming our new class. And this woman here has really handled it with a lot of grace and determination. So I loved hearing a little bit more in this presentation. Thank you, Jordan. All right, let's see if we have any questions for you. It looks like we've got a few coming in the chat. You mentioned that this position has brought some problem-solving skills your way. So could you elaborate a little bit more on that and tell us about the training that you received and how it will help you in your years post-Drew?
Yes, great question. So, for instance, this past year, as I mentioned, we ran into some issues because of the coronavirus and the pandemic. We thought we would be on campus all summer long, me and my co-coordinator, Althessa, with Megan, working hands-on and having an in-person June orientation as we usually do. And all of that couldn't happen because of the pandemic. So we had to scramble to kind of think creatively into how to do a June orientation virtually, which I think we pulled off really, really well, using some cool resources like the Path and certain things. But yeah, it was just a really interesting summer trying to learn how to do the traditional in-person Drew things virtually. And so this year specifically was a really big one for those problem-solving skills.
Excellent. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah.
What would you say was the biggest challenge of moving to an online orientation this past summer?
I think the biggest challenge was just getting in the right mentality of finding a workspace, because it was so exciting to be able to go to the student activities office and work with you in person, Megan specifically, and not having that, it was very hard to always schedule the right meetings and, find times that worked for everyone. But once we got in the groove, it really worked out well. But I think it was just transitioning my mindset from in person to online.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We focused a lot on this past year's orientation, but we know that we've had other experiences where we could all be together in person. So I think we have time for one last question, Jordan, before we move on to our next presenter. And this is a great one. So your first, meeting with these new students as first years, and they really look at you and the rest of the orientation committee as role models for them, right? In their very first few days on campus. So how do you manage the continued relationships with these new students now that they see you as a student leader beyond those few first days of orientation?
That is an excellent question. That first week is great for initially meeting the students and getting to know them and just being open and honest with them and making sure their transition to college is as smooth as possible, because it can be scary. But that first week is also a foundation for the rest of the year or for the rest of their whole time at Drew, because I've met freshmen, from my sophomore year that I know now as juniors. And so I still have all of those relationships. And I think it's just about keeping in touch, wishing them a happy first day of classes, wishing them a happy Thanksgiving break and then a winter break, and then seeing them in the spring semester when we all come back, and just continually checking in and making sure that I'm an available resource for them and that they can always feel comfortable and trust me to reach out when they need anything at all, whether it be something really large and they're worried about a big issue, or something just small about meal points or something, and I think just that foundation of building a nice relationship that's really friendly is super helpful.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your work on campus.
Thank you, Jordan. I know that the role that you and your student peer colleagues play as the OC leaders are so very important to the students. So thank you for your work in that. Our next speaker today is going to be Mateus Messina Di Carvalho, who will be talking about his on-campus employment in the Facility Service Response Center.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mateus Messina, and I'm here to share my experiences with you from this past summer that I worked in the facilities department and in the 37th New Jersey Governor's School of Sciences here at Drew. I will also talk about my personal takeaways from these two experiences, my plans for this next year, including graduating next May, and the steps I'm taking to make these plans possible. So yeah, during this past summer, I worked as a team member and as an office assistant at the Facilities Service Response Center. In the office, I mostly tracked invoices, gathered data about the university's utilities costs and consumption, and I created and managed work orders. And then, since I'm pursuing a physics degree here at Drew, I decided it would be beneficial for me to incorporate my academic and career goals of electrical engineering into the work I was doing in facilities. And then I asked the director of facilities, Stephanie McCormick, to let me work in the field with the electricians. She allowed me to do so, and working with them was a great opportunity. As I have taken physics courses such as electronics and electrodynamics, I had a very good theoretical background on how electrical components and how electrical systems work, and I had played with lots of those components in my electronics lab. But working with the electricians was just a great opportunity to have some on-the-job training on how these electrical systems interact at a large scale and how to repair them. I also worked for the 37th New Jersey Governor's School of Sciences at Drew University as a counselor. I was responsible for supporting the faculty in managing their classes and projects, and I also tutored physics and math to a select group of very bright high school students. And I assisted them with their classes, homework, book clubs, and team projects. Working in facilities made me connect with many people, including technicians, managers, and clients, and I quickly learned that communicating with them in a professional capacity is very different than talking to my physics peers and to the physics faculty. It is extremely hard and it requires a very deep understanding of a subject for you to explain a technical problem to someone that does not have the same technical experience as you. But just seeing an integrated system with all the components I learned and played with in a lab come to life in the real world was just fascinating. Working for the Governor's School was also very beneficial to me and very fun as well. I now have experience tutoring students, which is a great way to ensure that you have learned the subject matter. And it was just amazing to see that even though the whole program was online, how strong the bonds created between the students were. At the end of the 3-week program, it was like everybody knew each other for a much longer time. After graduating from Drew, with my physics major and mathematics and computer science minors, I plan to apply for a master's degree in electrical engineering. My experience this summer confirmed my interest in working in the industry or with experimental research, but I would not be following the theoretical research field. The actions I'm taking in order to make these plans possible are, I decided to pursue my specialized honors thesis in the field of optics on a topic that was initiated in the previous summer of 2019 when I worked in Dr. Larson's optics lab. And my group and I built an optical tracking device with only the equipment that we had in our physics department. I am also taking some leadership roles, such as being the president of Drew's chapter of the Society of Physics Students, also known as SPS, and as being captain of the Drew's swimming and diving team. Thank you all for hearing me, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
All right, Mateus, we have a question for you that's coming through. Can you talk to us a little bit more about your theoretical understanding of electronics, how that's helped you when working in with the facility staff?
Yeah, sure. As I'm a physics major here at Drew, I had 2 electronics and electricity related classes, electrodynamics and the electronics lab. And mainly in the electronics lab, I had the opportunity to play with resistors, capacitors, inductors, and a lot of electrical components, and seeing them interact with each other and like just repair fix the breakers here at Drew. We prepared like a photo cell on top of the Simon Forum that was awesome too. And just seeing that they all interact together and like you and see how they work, it was very, very beneficial.
Awesome.
It was very good.
Thank you. We also have some questions about the electrical shutdown that we had in August, because you were working with the facilities team at that time and you mentioned a little bit about it. Can you tell us what you learned from that experience if you had the opportunity to really work with the full electrical shutdown?
Yeah, so we had I had the opportunity to work in the power shutdown. I saw the replacement of the transformer, the change gear, and yeah, I had the opportunity to work with the HVAC technicians in the McClendon in the McClendon building, and I saw all the control boards that they're replacing and all the equipment that for the outlets that they're replacing too. And yeah, it was a very nice experience.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you had the opportunity to take advantage of an opportunity like that. That's another great skill that is going to last beyond your time at Drew with you. All right. I think that we have one more question that we can ask in the chat. I do want to say that we're getting a lot of shout outs in the chat for on-campus positions within the facilities department about just diverse opportunities and meaningful, fun tasks for students. So any of our students that are out there that are, considering working on campus, it sounds like this is a really great place to be. You're going to learn a lot. And so let me ask one last question before we move on to our next presenter. So how do you feel that working in facilities gives you a different perspective on campus than other students may have? It's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question too. I just feel that like I meet so many people that work here. I meet so many people of Drew staff, and I feel that like I knew like pretty much everybody on campus, and it's great to have this connection with everyone and to talk to everybody. And I think it's great to like get to know all the technicians, all the custodial people, all the GMTs, and you can walk around campus and you see them and you say hi to them, and they know your name. They respect you. They know that it work well. I think that's very valuable.
Awesome. I love that. It's never a bad thing to have many connections on campus, right? And I got a little reminder from one of my colleagues over here that for those of you who I was just bragging about working at the facilities department, for those of you who are wondering, how do I do that? You can check out Handshake. If you don't know how to go there, just go to the Drew website and type in Handshake, and that's where you'll find any open on-campus jobs that are available. So thank you so much, Mateus. I loved hearing about your experience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mateus. I know what most people are probably wondering is how you had any time to relax over the summer, but this is sort of true about our students and how they engage with each other and with the campus community, even during breaks. Thank you for telling us about your work. Our next speaker today is Kirsten Tremblay, who's going to be talking about justice ministry education in the context of community-based learning and civic projects.
Hi, my name is Kirsten Tremblay. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers, and today I'm going to be talking about the Justice Ministry Education Program held in the Theological School. I recently graduated with my Master of Divinity this past spring in May of 2020, and I will be completing the Master of Sacred Theology this coming May as a part of the class of 2021. The career communities with which I identify are social impact, education, law, and government, as well as theology and ministry, and my identity affinity communities are faith, religion, and spirituality, gender and sexuality, as well as visible and invisible disabilities. These are all personal communities to me, but they also relate to the coursework here in Justice Ministry Education, or JME. In the summer of 2018, I began my experience with the Justice Ministry Education Certificate Program as a student. I then became a teaching assistant in 2019, a research assistant in 2020, and I will again be the research assistant in the spring of 2021. I work alongside Reverend Dr. Tanya Lynn Bennett, the Associate Dean for Vocation and Formation in the Theo School. The program continues to adapt each year, first partnering with Drew's Theater Department. From there, our theological students initially worked with high school students from Newark in the Advantage Arts program, all while educating theological students on applying justice-seeking pedagogical resources to various communities. Personally, I've gained local connections and theological resources for faith-based social action in a communal setting. I have seen my colleagues flourish within this program and have connected with them as a campus leader. Communally, my confidence has grown as a progressive religious leader through the various roles I have held. The program's usage of Shalom curriculum as an asset-based community development program model has strengthened the work against systemic injustice and toward sustainability of initiatives created by theological students in their own faith-based communities. The Shalom curriculum that I mentioned has a graphic here on the left of my screen. S stands for Systemic Sustainable Transformation. H, Health, Healing, Harmony, and Wholeness. A, Asset-Based Community Development. L, Love for God, Neighbor, and Self. O, Organizing for Community Transformation. And M, Many Faiths and Many Cultures. While working with high school theater students from Newark and theological students at Drew, I served as a collaborative liaison between different sectors of leadership. I created, executed, and supervised high school programming, as well as theological scheduling at the graduate level by way of syllabus design for the spring 2020 semester of Justice Ministry Education. In a course with attributes such as problem-based learning and social justice advocacy, ethical decision-making as a leader among people of intersecting identities is constantly at the forefront of my work, while taking an innovative approach to cultivating differences and finding a creative resolution. As I stated, I completed my Master of Divinity and was a research assistant in the spring of 2020. I was then accepted into the Master of Sacred Theology for the current academic year, where I am studying in the area of religion and society with vocational goals of working in a campus environment. Over the past several years at Drew, I've come alive while working on community building and justice-seeking initiatives, and I intend to continue this work in my career in an education. Finally, in my current program, I am intentionally meeting with professors to discuss ideas about career goals and researching toward my extended paper, which will complete my degree requirements. I am working toward intercommunal, cross-campus diversity and inclusion efforts, as well as serving as the Vice President of TERRA. This is one of our Theo caucuses, and TERRA stands for Transforming Environmental and Religious Resources into Action. Additionally, I am continuing to make further connections with others in campus leadership positions to determine my best fit in a creative, justice-seeking position following my spring 2021 graduation with my Master of Sacred Theology from Drew Theological School. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. I loved hearing about your experience. One of my favorite quotes that you just said was that you come alive when working with community building on campus and justice work. And I just feel your passion. So I love it. We do have some questions for you as well. Our first one is that you certainly brought much to the high school students that you worked with through the program. What did you learn specifically from that experience?
Yeah, thank you, Megan, and thanks for this question. So previously, prior to entering the theological school, I actually worked at a high school for 8 years, but it was located in the Midwest in a very rural, low-income area. So moving to Madison, New Jersey was quite a shift in being the complete opposite of that. But then getting to work with Newark students was a good middle ground of, hearing their experiences, and many of them experiencing difficulties in their lives, and yet seeing theater as an outlet for them, and being able to provide them with justice resources at their educational level was great for me, and continuing that coming alive part. But also they taught me so much about the area as I began to, work with those students less than a year before moving here. And they would say, over in Newark in that area. And I said, I don't know anything about that. Can you tell me? And they were shocked, of course. But they, taught me as much as I taught them, I think, if not more.
I love that so much. All right, we do have some more questions coming through for you. So this one really applies to the current world that we are in right now. So can you talk a little bit about how these community building efforts have been affected by the need for physical distancing and virtual environments?
Sure. Yeah, that was something that really threw us for a loop this past spring. I think as we began the semester, we assumed that we would all be in person and had no idea what was coming toward us. And so Reverend Dr. Tanya Lynn Bennett and I really had to adapt what we were doing. We already had the class that was meeting on Zoom, but the students had to really refocus their original ideas toward, what's the reality. And so we had one student who wanted to put together a basketball program. And he said, I have this space at a nearby church. I have these kids who want to come and I have all these theological resources. So I'll do that. And then we quickly realized he was not going to get to play basketball in person for quite some time. So instead, we worked with him toward moving that into a digital space and what different platforms he could use and how to use, a limited space that a kid may have just to bounce a basketball in their room without making too much noise in a huge apartment building, but still being able to follow through with his focus. And that one really, just sticks out to me as a project that adapted as well as it could and has so much possibility and potential for continuing on both, in an online exclusive world as well as a world where we can hopefully return to being in person one day.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear the creative problem solving that is happening from our students and our community right now. It's really incredible work.
Yes, and that student actually gave us a little basketball tutorial as part of his final presentation, which I was not prepared for as a non-athletic person, but he was great.
I love that. All right, we do have time for one last question for you before we move on to our next presenter. Oh, here's a good one. All right. What was a takeaway from your experience with these programs that surprised you the most?
I love surprises. Said no introvert ever, I think. I think I was just surprised in the ways that I was challenged by going, experiencing it differently each year, by going through first as a student and being a former educator and still continuing, obviously, to be in educational spaces. I thought by the second year that everything would be figured out. And then I thought by the third year, everything would be figured out. And now by this upcoming fourth year, I've decided it's not all going to be figured out and that's fine. So I think just going through it, those surprises does surprise me because that's just not really how I roll. But it's, how life works and we keep adapting toward it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thank you.
I love that, Kirsten. It's life lessons and pushing the boundaries on your introvertedness because no one would hear that presentation and know that's true about you. So thank you for that. Our next presenter today is Gabriela Ramirez, who will be talking about her internship experience.
Hi everyone, my name is Gabriela Ramirez and today I'll be sharing my immersive experience with Solomon Rashma for U.S. Congress, which is a campaign internship I did over this summer. So to begin, Solomon Rashma was the only progressive candidate running for U.S. Congress from Michigan's 12th district. What exactly I did while I was a campaign intern who increased voter outreach through the phone and banking, I attended weekly update meetings and I participated more specifically in the racial and criminal justice reform group. And I did this within the span of 3 months. I was an intern from May 2020 until July 2020. And the reason why I was able to do an internship for somebody who was based in Michigan was because this was remote due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The impact that this had on me personally, well, as a campaign intern, I definitely started to better understand how it works to be involved in the political realm. I need to understand that there are certain rules to this game, to say the least, because in my opinion, politics are sort of like a game of chess, to say the least. So to me, it definitely made it more clear that that's something I want to pursue. And it also helped me understand how to start a grassroots campaign. For those of you who do not know what a grassroots campaign is, a grassroots campaign is essentially started from the citizens within their own community So thinking about things like the civil rights movements of the 1960s would be a great example of what a grassroots campaign looks like. And through this internship, I definitely learned how to do that because my peers and I were all different members across the country working towards a similar goal, which was to expand progressive policy in a moderately liberal county. And not only did that have an impact on us as individuals, but it definitely demonstrated to those who were witnessing what we were doing how easy it can be to launch your own campaign and essentially create the change that you want to see within your own community. So what I learned here, I'd say outside of progressive policy would be the importance of teamwork and how you need to essentially communicate with all of those you're working with, no matter if you're in different departments, no matter if they are higher up than you in terms of a position, because at the end of the day, all of your work will overlap with each other, especially if you're going to be working in politics. Because as a politician, you know, the work that you do will impact those who are not directly involved in the political realm. So it's definitely important to make sure that that clarity is discussed amongst, you know, you and your colleagues. And this for me was also my first experience canvassing for somebody running for office. And to me, it was definitely eye-opening to see how people who share one common interest can create something so powerful. If I'm not mistaken, there were over 300 interns, maybe more, and we would all meet once a week at 9 p.m. and we'd all just start talking about what we want to see, what our next steps are for that election to take place on August 4th of 2020. And throughout this whole time, I connected with my peers a lot during the meetings. And outside of, you know, politics, I definitely got to know, you know, what they plan to do in their futures, what they stood for. And it really made it more clear to me where I stand as an individual, and it helped me better construct my own arguments, which to me was really important considering that I want to pursue a career within the political science field. And a last thing I want to note is that because of my identities as being Hispanic and first generation and a woman, I definitely had a different perspective than those who did not maybe have those intersecting identities. So my primary focus was in the racial justice and reform group. And that made me want to better participate in trying to resolve the disproportionate crises that affect people of color. And then lastly, what I want to do now is I definitely want to pursue law school. I'm not sure what I want to do yet, but I definitely know I want to do that. I ran for student government this year, and now I am a senator at large for the university, and I want to continue working with minoritized communities. So that would include taking on a law, justice, and society minor, continuing to look for internships in my interest in government, and continue to push for organizations that I'm the leader of, which includes things like the BIPOC Peer Mentorship Program, the Drew First Generation Student Club, and just continuing to use the platform I have to make all these things possible. And that's essentially all about my experience. Thank you.
Excellent, Gabby. Excited for this first question right out of the gate for you. So, as somebody from New Jersey, how did you come across an internship in Michigan, and what made you interested in going for a more nationwide internship experience versus sticking with something local, regardless of this being a remote experience?
Hi, Megan, and thank you to everybody, you know, who's watching here today. This is really exciting. What definitely drew me to this internship, for one, was really funny. It's just, I found it on TikTok, which I'm sure most people know how popular this app has become. And I found it on TikTok one day because I follow a lot of political-based accounts, considering that I am a political science major. And what really drew me to this candidate in particular were his progressive policies and ideas. In New Jersey and other local areas, I haven't really seen any candidates promoting these kinds of policies that really drew me towards them, whereas he really did stick out. So I took initiative to reach out to him directly, and we had I want to say about a half an hour long interview. And afterwards, I was recruited immediately, and we began that internship. So being a nationwide based experience, I definitely did get to learn from a lot of my peers literally based all around the country. And that was a really great learning experience. And that was another thing that I really took away from this as well.
Amazing. You know, sometimes our social media gets a pretty bad rap, right? But this is just a tribute to how powerful it can be when you're following the right accounts and, you know, you're using it in a really strategic way. So thank you for sharing that. Amazing. All right. I have another question for you. How will your experience in this internship impact how you approach your leadership roles at Drew? You mentioned many leadership roles that you already hold. So how will these two things correlate?
So in this internship, I definitely learned how to take on a lot of initiative by myself, considering that we were online. And when we had our group meetings, I would sometimes facilitate the one centered around race and racial justice reform, as well as the criminal justice reform group. And what really helped me alongside with that, that I brought along to Drew, was learning the importance of teamwork and communication with those who I'm working with. I think that my largest takeaway is definitely valuing others' opinions, not just looking at a one-sided frame, but definitely listening to what everybody has to say so we can all come to that consensus and, you know, produce something that is not just representative of what I want, but what of the entire community wants to do. So I definitely want to take that and bring it into the work that I'm doing right now, including the BIPOC peer mentoring program, Drew First, and, you know, whatever else the future has in store.
Awesome. What an amazing perspective to have. And our students will benefit greatly from that. So we have time for one last question. Andrew is asking, so he mentions that MI 12 is a complex district that you were in during this experience. So how did you and the candidate approach the very diverse community that you were working with?
So considering this was a remote-based internship, what we did was phone and text banking to just whoever was registered to vote in the district, the majority of them leaning towards the Democratic Party. On occasion, we did have those who were on the right wing of the political paradigm who were not necessarily fond of our work, to say the least. But I definitely think that even though every person we engaged with was not always supportive of our work, it definitely never brought us down. If anything, I think it made the community that I was working with stronger, because it really brought us to understand that what we believe and stand for is definitely something that we want to see happen. And considering that the community we were working with wasn't really centered around that policy as of yet, made us want to work harder to achieve our goals. So it definitely kept us up and going, and, you know, made us feel a lot more empowered to continue our work.
Great. Thank you so much, Gabby.
Thank you, Gabby, for sharing that. I think one of the most interesting things you were talking about, the perspective between being in the nationwide internship, and there was also something that you were bringing to that, being from the East Coast. So I think that's an interesting aspect of your work. Our next presenter today is going to be Caitlin Fleming, who will be talking about research that she conducted as part of the Drew Summer Science Institute.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Fleming, and today I'm going to tell you about my immersive experience, which is research. So I had this experience in the summer of 2019 when I participated in Drew Summer Science Institute. This is an 8-week program where students can spend full time in the lab working with a professor or a RISE fellow. I worked with Dr. Evans in 2019. He is a retired NMR spectroscopist and currently a RISE fellow. I had approached him earlier in the year and said that I was really interested in NMR from what I learned in high school, and I was wondering if I would be able to learn more about it with him. And even though NMR is usually used in chemistry and my background is in physics, he said he actually had a great idea for a crossover project that he'd been wanting to do for a while, using NMR to study molecular dynamics. And the rest was history. The personal impact of this project for me is it made me a much more independent learner. It taught me how to do research. It gave me an invaluable mentor who I've asked for advice many times, and I can count on him to give me good advice. I also got understanding of a really interesting and niche topic that I wouldn't have learned about in my classes, and I got a feel for the field of research, which is really important for directing my career path. The community impact of my project is it contributed to the body of scientific research, and it also contributed to enthusiasm for science through the various presentations that I've done at an undergraduate physics conference, at Day of Scholars, and now here. So basically, when you do undergraduate research, you have to start from nothing and build up. I didn't know how NMR worked, and it's nuclear magnetic resonance. It's used for inspecting the structure of organic molecules. So I had to learn what it is, how it works. I had to learn how it can be used to study molecular dynamics. I had to learn how to read the data in these graphs, like the ones to the left. There's a lot going on there, and I just had to learn what each of the types of markings mean. And I also had to learn how to use the software to manipulate it so that I could present it as I needed to. And I also learned a lot about research methods. So how do you know what you don't know? In classes, they give you a syllabus, which is basically like a checklist for how to do well in the class. In research, you just have a vague end goal and all the middle steps are missing. You have to figure them out yourself. And the first one is what do you not know and what do you need to find out? Also, I learned about staying on task. It's really easy to go down a wormhole looking up a term, and then in that description, there's another term that you want to look up, and by the time you realize it, you're studying chimpanzee psychology and it's just completely irrelevant. So staying on task and avoiding those rabbit holes was something that I got much better at, as well as independent motivation, because when you're working for long periods of time, you have to stay motivated and keep being productive. I also learned that research is almost never done. Even at the end of 8 weeks, I still had a million questions that I could have gone on researching for a long time. And even though I had enough, I had learned enough to present at a conference, I still had many questions. And that's just the nature of research. And it's kind of surprising when you first learn it, but it also keeps it interesting and inspiring. So my follow-up plan is this gave me a foot in the door for my research experience that I did this summer, 2020, sponsored by NSF, which are very competitive programs. And because I was able to show previous experience and I had a good recommendation from my mentor, it helped me get in. Also, it helped me decide if grad school was the right place for me, which I decided it was. But without the experience of actually working in research, it's hard to decide that you want to devote your life to that. So I am really glad I had this experience. My next step is to apply to grad school. We'll see how that goes. And thank you all for listening. Are there any questions?
I love that segue. Caitlin and I go way back to the Day of Scholars where we did this already. So I'm happy to have her joining with me again today. So thanks, Caitlin. It was excellent to hear all about your research experience. And we do have some questions coming through for you. All right. Our first one is digital proficiency is such an important transferable skill. How do you see that benefiting you moving forward?
It's already benefited me so much. This summer, I did have that research experience at the University of Oklahoma virtually. And the digital proficiency skills that I gained have been so useful. Coding in Python, coding in C++, and just the more you learn, the easier it is to learn new coding languages and new skills. And so I really think that having that strong background in digital skills has been really helpful for me.
Awesome. Great. All right. Our next question for you is it's a little bit longer, so bear with me. All right, so we're very impressed by the social impact that you cited of contributed to enthusiasm for science. In what ways will you carry that with you into your post-Drew years, into a society where people devalue science?
Well, one thing that I'm already carrying that enthusiasm for science into is I was really excited. This fall, I'm on a leave of absence, and I have been thinking for a while that I really want to go back to my high school and talk to some physics classes and inspire, hopefully, some girls to pursue a STEM field, because I think that it's not that, at least in my area, girls are no longer directly turned away, but they're not really encouraged as much as they could be. And so I think that I would really love now and for hopefully a long time going forward to have an impact on my community and show girls or young women a role model who has chosen this and really loves it, and just show them all the possibilities.
I love that you focus a bit on women in the STEM field here. We've got actually a lot of questions coming in about that. And I just found out we had during our launch STEM panel last night, 3 out of the 4 panelists were actually women. So our last question, we're going to keep this one going for today, is so we of course often hear about the challenges that women face in these scientific fields. Can you talk to us a bit about how you specifically see these roles changing in the years to come?
I want to say, first of all, that I am so happy about how they've already changed. Since I have been in high school, as I said, I think that girls are less encouraged to do science, but every teacher and professor that I've come into contact with has been completely supportive of me and my goals. And as I've come to Drew, I've just, there's about an equal gender ratio in the physics department. And I just want to say that I love where we've already gotten to with this. I hope that in the future years, people who are my generation and a little bit older will start to have an equal ratio of women in the workplace, so that by the time that, future generations are where I am now, we'll have an equal gender ratio in our mentors. And I think that would be ideal and really great. And I hope that in 20 years, I'm mentoring a younger student just like me.
Beautiful. I love to hear it. And I completely support everything that you just said, Caitlin. Thank you so much. Keep up the amazing work.
Yeah, what a great ending, Caitlin, to note your role as a role model. And I also in particular liked that you commented on the rabbit hole that you will go down as a researcher in your future, because that is a very important takeaway lesson from the experience that you have had so far. So thank you for sharing that with us. Our next speaker today will be Gianna-Lise Kaba, who will be talking about the long trek that she completed in London.
Hi, I'm Gianna-Lise Kaba, and I'm a senior at Drew. I'm majoring in English and Religious Studies with a minor in International Relations. And today I'll be talking about my experiences in the London semester. So the semester for me took place in London from August to the end of November of 2019. I lived in Kilburn Park, an area outside of central London. During the program, I learned and experienced a variety of things, from watching Henry V at the Globe to watching a lecture play on British colonization called The History of Water in the Middle East. I was able to interview first-generation Brits on their experiences being Black and Muslim in London for my colloquium project. The program took Drew students to Manchester to visit the BBC building and meet with professionals from the fields of journalism, playwriting, and documentary production. Going to London was so positively influential to me in so many ways. I was able to experience so many of England's historical sites, such as Kensington Palace, Henry VIII's Palace, going to so many museums, seeing artworks. I was able to meet professionals that I would not have had access to otherwise. One of the great things about the London semester is that the professors you have are actually professionals in their field. For example, my media professor used to be a BBC documentarian, and my playwriting professor is an actress and a playwright of her own. So you meet people who are in the world, and they can introduce you to people who are also in that world. Even if you're not a theater major and it may not necessarily pertain to you, it expands your worldview nonetheless. I was also able to meet some really amazing friends, and the bonds you create with your other Drew peers are very strong. You sort of create this community of your own. You know, you all relate to this experience because you're going through it together, and that can create some really amazing memories. So here are just some pictures of my time at Drew. On the left was my flat. There were 3 flats that sort of divided the 24 students. It was a great time. We had so many great memories. And the other 2 are pictures of a carnival and sort of a street in London that I went to. London's in a beautiful, beautiful city. I suggest everyone goes to the carnival in Hyde Park in the winter if they ever have a chance. And I suggest take many pictures because the views are very unlike what you would see in the US. Also, one of the great things that I love about the London semester was that they encourage autonomy and independence and traveling. Before you start the semester, when you're going through your orientation process, when you first get there, they really emphasize, we want you to travel, we want you to be autonomous, we want you to see the city. And so you should. And so luckily during fall break, myself and a couple of other Jew students were able to go to Amsterdam on the right and Prague on the left during our time there. And it was amazing. And I suggest everyone should travel when they can. It's very accessible and it's very cheap. I think my cheapest flight was $70. So I think going to London would be a great opportunity to then view other European cultures. During my time in London, I enhanced and developed a lot of skills. So one skill was time efficiency. Like I said, the Drew London semester, they emphasize independence. And so before you begin, they give you your own 2 pass that gives you free rides on buses and tubes all over London, which is not only cost efficient, but it promotes that you should travel and you should sightsee. So it made me time efficient because if I had to go to class, I needed to know, okay, well, it takes 15 minutes to get to class, and it makes you plan correctly for your future plans. And not only that, but it gives you a sense of independence because it makes you want to travel to different London. For example, I'm ethnically Dominican, and there aren't a lot of Dominican people in London, but I was able to find a restaurant in the outskirts of London called Brixton, and I went with another Jew student. It was an amazing time. So you can really look for anything in London and probably find it. Another example is collaboration. So because everyone is so busy with their own projects and traveling, being able to collaborate is a necessary skill to have. You need to be able to communicate, compromise, and work efficiently to not only have a high quality project, but to get it in on time. So going to London helped solidify my desire to become an international lawyer, and I do want to live in London for at least a few years. London can be very cheap. I know it's one of the most expensive real estate countries in the world, or cities in the world, but as a student who lived there for a few months, if you want to be frugal, you can definitely do it. There are ways to do it. There's access to affordable meals, affordable food. Doing my colloquium project on the Muslim and Caribbean immigrants of London expanded my worldview on what I could do with my future career and helped solidify the love I have for topics like racism, immigration, and interfaith relationships. I am planning on working for a refugee agency or an NGO in the first year or two after I graduate from Drew. And then eventually I plan on going to law school and becoming a lawyer and specializing in international law. And some of the things I'm doing to do that is I'm currently applying to NGOs and refugee agencies like the International Rescue Committee and the Peace Corps. I'm connecting with professors, networking. They're giving out my applications, my resume, and I'm getting the process done. I'm also currently studying for the LSAT. I've been studying for the LSAT for about a year, and I will be taking that in June of 2021. So that is my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm free to answer any questions anyone has. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Oh, another great segue into our Q&A. Thanks, Giannalise. So I just found out a fun fact that the London semester is Drew's longest semester overseas program. It's been running for more than 50 years strong. So that's pretty incredible for those of you who didn't know that are watching along with us. All right, Giannalise, are you ready for your first question? All right. So our students often comment that they learn just as much about US culture as they do about British culture when studying in London. Did you find that to be the case? And if so, how?
That's a really good question. I think you learn more about US culture in terms of how other people see US culture. And I think that's just as important because you see things about your own behaviors and your own culture that you might have not noticed before. So, for example, we all know that Americans like have this stereotype of being very loud compared to some other cultures. But in reality, when I actually went to London, like that's not true. Like everyone is very loud. Like British culture is very loud. And I just realized that was sort of a stereotype from the media and not necessarily true of how American culture is. So I just found out that people think Americans in general are very chill. Mostly on the like people think about that like the younger demographic, like my age, think that Americans are very relaxed and chill. When you get to older Americans, that's when the stereotypes start to come in. But yeah, I learned a lot about America.
Great, thank you for that. All right. How did you decide on the topic of the research project that you completed while you were in London?
That's a great question too. I've always been interested in immigration and race, and I took a media class with a professor who was a documentarian for BBC, and we were talking about the differences between America and Britain. And this professor, Christopher, he said that Americans, when you scratch the coin, they see race. And when the British people scratch the coin, they see class. So I had that in my mind. And as I was interviewing people, I learned that it's not true, that Britain has maybe not as much of a structured racist history as America, but it's not about class, it's about race as well. And it's I don't want to say ignorance, but I want to say it's a lack of knowledge among, I think, general British population about how much race actually plays into the life of first generation Brits and immigrant Brits. And I think that I wanted to know what that culture was like in Britain. And we lived in a place, like we lived in Kilburn Park, and it has a huge Muslim and Arab population. There's a Kilburn High Road that goes right near where we're living, and there were a bunch of Middle Eastern restaurants, North African restaurants, a lot of Muslim restaurants. So I knew that if I really wanted to become accustomed and understand the people I was living around, it would be a good idea to talk to them about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I do have another question for you. So we know that, of course, when you're studying abroad, you are essentially leaving campus, you're getting this amazing experience, but you're no longer physically on our campus, but we know that the Trek experience does still really impact our education as a whole, as a Drew student. So can you elaborate a little bit more about how your experience abroad really did enhance your entire experience as a Drew student?
Okay, that's kind of a big question. I'll try to be as structured about my answer as possible. So I guess I'll start academically. So I think academically, it made me interested in things I wasn't necessarily focused on beforehand. So I talked about in my presentation how for my playwright class, we had to go to a new play every week. And I saw plays from Shakespeare at the Globe to, you know, a small community play in the middle of London. And I'm not a theater major, but now I love looking at plays. I watch, you know, operas on my free time. Like I love going to museums, and they really encourage that. They really encourage you to go into the arts during the London semester. So now I just kind of like look up these things on my own, and it's kind of academically made me love art even more. Also, I think independently wise, you have to be kind of independent to be successful in the London semester, but when you're really practicing it during that semester, and you have to basically do everything yourself, you're cooking, you're cleaning yourself, you're living as an adult essentially. And when you take that to Drew, it's sort of like, oh, okay, it just makes, I think your day-to-day planning very easy. It makes it easy to plan for things to go wrong, because when I was traveling in London, something would go wrong all the time. And you just have to adapt. So it just taught me how to adapt better, how to be okay with the unknown. And I think personally, the friendships I made, I am very grateful for that. The flat I had was amazing. I'm very close to some of the people I went to London with. I still talk to them all the time. I go to their houses. We're integrating. We're part of each other's lives now. And I think that is one of the best things that I miss about London. We still have a group chat, like the whole London semester, we still talk in a group chat. And our like first year anniversary of going to London was like a couple of weeks ago, and we're all just like talking and sending pictures. So I think it's that sort of community and friendship aspect of it that I think long-term wise, I really love and take away from.
What a great testimony to the study abroad experience and how that can really just impact not even your life as a student, but your life in general. And I will say I studied abroad when I was in college, and I am still connected to the group that I was with about a decade later, not to date myself. But all right, we've got one last just like favorite fun question. And then we're going to move on to our next presenter. But I got to know, obviously you've got this travel bug, right? And you want to be an international lawyer. So when we can travel again one day, your next opportunity, where are you going?
When we went to London, a group of students went to Italy for the weekend, and I really want to go there. Venice, Milan, the whole country. So I think that's my next destination.
That's where I was too. So I highly recommend it. Thanks so much, Giannalise. We loved hearing about your experience.
Thanks, Giannalise. It's hard to imagine a sort of better experience that actually defines a trek, right? The idea of travel and rethinking and exploring and connecting. So thank you for sharing that. Our next presenter today is Leah Wandera, who is going to be talking about her on-campus employment working in Tillman House.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Wandera. I'm from Kenya, but I'm currently here in Madison because I'm a first year graduate student doing my master's in divinity. Social justice advocacy is my track. So join me today as I share and celebrate my experience of working and working in Tillman Center, an experience that I called a global experience. On 9th March, I got a chance to start working with the International Student Center as administrative assistant. And so working in Tillman Center makes me feel like I'm in a class doing international relations or global studies course. It's an oasis, it's a well where I feel like I continue fetching water to quench my global mindfulness thirst. This space has drawn me to close understanding of the needs, the process, and the success of being an international student. Besides my classes and seminary hall, this was a space that gave me courage of being an international student. It was the first place I entered on the day I arrived on True Campus, because it assures me of my legal identity and status as international student. Through my assigned tasks and projects such as researching on international graduate student association, compiling guidance and tips for off-campus housing, extra time requests for exam period for some students, hosting virtual welcome desk, weekly learning and sharing on American items and culture, administering and coordinating the Conversation Partners Program for English learning students, among other programs, has created a platform for me to deeply understand who is an international student. This experience has been a great resource for my settling in as an international student, like finding housing off campus and even understanding the key fine details included in our housing policies and other forms that sometimes we tend to bypass while filling in those online forms. So getting to know, understand, and embrace my school, my community, my studies, and my work has been fostered here. This space called my attention to learning so much about our department, such that it also helped me get connected and updated on the various issues that fellow international students were experiencing during the transitioning into virtual learning period. And so being able to understand the needs and processes that international students go through helped me reach out to fellow African students during the summer period to create a safe space to share and care. It also inspired me to revive the integration connection of African students into the Black ministerial caucus. If I had just spent that time in my room without doing anything, I don't think this would have happened. On the other hand, my presence working in Tillman Center fosters the value of effectiveness to our multidisciplinary team. Not only am I able to support through my experience on working the assigned projects and tasks, but my presence is also a reminder to the team of the needs and requirements of the international students that could be easily bypassed due to the busy schedules that sometimes they do have. Therefore, I continue to gain experience in my leadership skills, my communication skills, learning about the American, Asian, African culture, and growing my global network and engagement with great teams and fellow international students. I acquire transferable skills such as critical thinking, ethical thinking, digital proficiency, collaboration, and engaging differences, which are very key in my profession as a project manager for community development, reflecting religious values in addressing social issues. Because working with socioeconomic or environmental issues calls for a global thinking and local acting, these social issues are interconnected and intertwined in a global web of structures that influences, that goes beyond our geographical borders. So as a deaconess candidate called into life ministry to alleviate suffering, eradicate causes of injustices, and all that robs life, dignity, and worth, to facilitate the development of full human potential and share in building global community through the Church Universal, this opportunity is giving me a global experience. Being able to think, connect, engage globally, and view these issues from a global point of view, then act locally. So thank you to Drew, thank you to Tillman Center. Thank you for providing this space and platform for me. Thank you.
Leah, that was beautiful. I loved hearing just the full circle connection of, you know, the Into office being a space that you was your first place that you visited on campus as a Drew student, and now it has such a deep meaning for you. So thank you for sharing that experience. All right, are you ready for our first question for you today? Okay. So in what ways has your work with Into and in Tillman assisted you to think theologically about global justice?
Wow, thank you so much, Megan. That's a very wonderful and great question. So when we talk about religious issues, yeah, these are things that are so diverse in our thinking. And so when I'm working in Tillman Center, it gives me that chance of thinking beyond my own. Yeah, being able to know that there is that diversity even in our religious perspective, because remember, even if we are looking at getting the international students, these are students who are coming from diverse religions, perspective. And so being at Drew and coming from across different geographical areas, we come with different attitudes, perspectives of our religious faith and all denominational experiences. And so it gives me that chance to be able to embrace that diversity in our religious aspect.
Amazing. Thank you. How can you use this experience to help to educate non-international students about the challenges that international students confront?
Thank you so much. This is an interesting question because I feel like this gives me a space to be a bridge between the international student and non-international student, yeah? Because if we are not created that space to engage and connect with each other, it could be hard for them to learn from us and for us to learn from them. So it is kind of like let me say, a cultural exchange thing, because the domestic students will wish to learn from the international students, and the international students will wish to learn from the domestic students. And so just being an international student, we need the domestic students to understand the culture in which we are learning, the new culture in which we are learning. And they also need us to understand how they can embrace this different culture that we come with. So to me, it gives me that space of being a bridge to be able to link the both ends.
Amazing. You are doing very important work on this campus. So thank you for that. All right. It looks like we have time for one more question. And we are getting some questions to hear a little bit more about the Language Partners Program. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Thank you. These are very interesting. One of those interesting programs that I'm just so excited about doing. So the Conversation Partners Program, it's a program that we do in Tillman Center that is supposed to help the international students who are learning English, because some of us, English is not our first speaking language, yeah? And when we come in, of course, everything will be taught in English. So we need to get that space for us to be in class and for us to learn English. And so Conversation Partners Program gives the international students a chance to be connected with the fluent speaking English. So the most interesting is for you to be a fluent English speaker, you don't necessarily need to be a domestic student. And so we even have some of the international students who are already fluent in speaking English. So it connects both the domestic and the international students who are fluent in English and the international students who are learning English, to help them progress and advance in their English learning. So it is a program that we do each and every semester. Then it's only 8 weeks. The partners need to meet 1 hour per week. And so just through engaging, connecting, and learning and sharing and growing as we improve in our English learning.
Amazing. I can just feel your energy and how much you love this program. And it sounds like just incredible, incredible work that you and the Into office are doing. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And also what a great conversation partner you must be in those meetings. And I also love the idea that you talk about this as your own sort of little internal cultural exchange team. So it's very interesting, Leah. Thank you for sharing that with all of us. Our next speaker today is going to be Young Hak Lee, who will be talking about his student leadership role in 2020.
Hello, my name is Young-Hak Lee. I'm a senior at Drew Theological School, and my presentation today is being a student leader in 2020. So I'm a senior at Drew Theo School, serving as Vice President of the Theological Student Association, TSA. And from September 2019 to June 2020, I also served Covenant United Methodist Church in Plainfield, New Jersey as a part of my internship. Growing up from a conservative Protestant context where Christian queers are banned from their churches, I wanted to do my internship in a more progressive and justice-seeking congregation. So I served Covenant UMC as a seminary intern, and it taught me how to nurture hope in the midst of challenging times, further influencing my leadership role as TSA Vice President. Especially my internship experience amidst the COVID-19 outbreak, the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other Black and brown people in the US, and subsequent Black Lives Matter protests have profoundly influenced me to be a leader who engages with our beloved neighbors' pain and suffering. Being a student leader in 2020 was very unique and challenging, and it was almost impossible without the support and trust of my colleagues, student leaders, and faculty members. People were deeply lamenting, and my colleagues and I were called to act, to seek justice and nurture hope amidst the pain and sorrow. When Allison, TSA President, and I started our term last January in 2020, we did not anticipate such challenges. However, as we respond to this call to seek justice and nurture hope in our community, we ourselves have become the most crucial community that profoundly influenced each other. My community, TSA 2020, also had a significant impact on the Jew community. After the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other Black and brown people in the US, TSA and student leaders at Drew University organized a student-led event called Say Their Names and Call to Action. Moreover, TSA projects and events such as Dean's Review 3, TSA and Caucus Worship for graduating seniors, online orientation, and cyber cafe helped both new and current theological students come together in the midst of pandemic. Through my internship and my leadership role in TSA, I realized that all skills could be used to spread God's love in challenging times. My videography and editing skills were essential to TSA projects and Covenant UMC's ministry during the pandemic. And because of these skill sets that I had, I was asked to serve as advisory roles in producing online events and worship services. It also strengthened my voice to be innovative and problem-solving as I responded to those events and circumstances with my ethical and theological answers that I have been developing in my theological study at Drew. With these skill sets that I have found and developed in 2020, I learned how to collaborate with others and help the community come together and nurture hope amidst challenging times. My successful internship and leadership experiences gave me courage and confidence to keep my faith in God of justice and God of love. I was recently appointed as an associate pastor last July, serving Trinity UMC in South Amboy and Wesley UMC in Addison. I believe that this world can be a better place with the teachings of Jesus Christ, and it is my hope that I build a faith community that spreads the true love of God for all people, regardless of race, gender, and class. As I am still in the United Methodist ordination process, I will take required United Methodist courses at Drew and prepare myself for upcoming interviews with my denomination. Moreover, I am interested in pursuing STM program after my Master of Divinity degree at Drew Theological School. Thank you for listening to my stories. I hope you have a great day and see you guys.
Woo, is anyone else getting chills from that one? Just me? That was amazing, Young Hawk. I just feel honored to be in your presence, hearing your motivation. It's truly inspiring. Thank you so much for that. So we've got some questions, some good ones coming through for you. The first one out of the gate is, so it's probably not particularly challenging to encourage your fellow Theo School peers to step into leadership roles right now, but how do you think that you can apply these lessons and encourage others when you are you're in your time outside of the forest?
Well, so how I became a TSA leader is I never thought that I would be leading student government because I came here as an international student. I didn't think that one day I will be leading this all students from diverse backgrounds and all that. But then when I think of it, I learned how much help that I received from our fellow students when I came here as a first year student here at Drew. And that experiences motivated me to be a leader. So, so I want people to think that what we have been receiving from others, what help, and those helps that you received, uh, that's the thing that you will have to share with others too in the future. That could be love, support, or any knowledge in anything. Those experiences help me to become a leader, TSA leader, helping other students who are coming not just from the U.S. but from all over the places in the world.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. In what ways did serving in a multicultural and cross-cultural internship setting offer you the insights and the approaches to public leadership?
Great question. Thank you. So growing up from a Korean Protestant conservative context, this experience was very crucial as a pastor who will welcome all people, regardless of who they are. And if you want to be a leader, I think these experiences of different cultures and different perspectives are very important. And when it comes to Theo school, who wants to become a pastor, it's even more important. In my setting, I came to Drew because when my school, my former seminary, decided that I have to sign the agreement that I will never support LGBT Christians, and with my signature on it, I had to sign the agreement before I go into the seminary. But as a seminary who wants to be a pastor who welcomes all, regardless of who they are, that was not my belief in Jesus Christ. So having these experiences from different cultures who can teach me how to authentically love one another and outside of my context, and to learn their different pains and sufferings, and also different ways to share their love and share their grace with one another when it comes to faith groups. That was very crucial in my experiences in these different cultures. I think that is not necessarily limited to your pastoral experiences. I think everyone from different fields needs this diverse experiences from many different backgrounds, so that you can learn. And because this world is not where you just live by yourself, but it's the place where we love one another and we live together.
Beautifully, beautifully said. Thank you, Young Hawk. We've got one last question for you, and I purposely saved this one for last because I love it. So earlier in your video, we saw you spoke about nurturing hope in challenging times. What suggestions do you have for others who want to do the same?
What suggestion? Here's my pastoral perspective. If you are someone who believes in God, please pray for the person. I think prayer opens up the space where divine presence can intervenes in the midst of our laments, but also it opens up your hearts. The moment of prayers, it opens up your hearts to think of that person's and think profoundly what I can do for the persons. So have a moment of prayers. It's a and just reflect upon yourselves and also the people around you. I think that's a good start of nurturing hope in our community. Just to relax for moments and just to think of yourself and think of and pray. If you whoever you believe, pray the divine that this just let it out, your sufferings, your pain, and then let the love and the thinking of others come in, and that will be a start of nurturing hope, I believe. So I highly encourage you to do that, and you are always welcome to ask me for any prayers if if you need prayers.
Thank you so much for that, Young Hawk. Just so many beautiful words shared. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Young Hawk. I also really like the connections you were drawing between past, present, and future, which I think is a good thing to be thinking about in this moment also. So thank you. I'm going to introduce our last speaker now, certainly not our least, but we are excited to hear still from Naya Ferris, who is going to be talking about her community-based learning course and civic engagement work. And the course in which she completed was the Theater in the Community, the Newark Collaboration course.
Hello, everyone. My name is Naya Ferris. I am a senior media communications and French major with a minor in arts administration. And today I have the pleasure of talking about my immersive experience, Theater in the Community, the Newark Collaboration. In the spring of my sophomore year, I had the pleasure of participating in the Newark Collaboration, a program that teaches acting and theater arts to students from the Bolden Center in Newark, New Jersey. Throughout the semester, we worked with these amazingly talented high school students on theater techniques such as acting, play, and playwriting, all culminating in a live performance written in partly by the students themselves. Personal impact. It confirmed my love of theater and creating it, and solidified the fact that I think every single person needs arts education in some way. And the community impact was we helped students develop their appreciation and love for theater and dance while providing an outlet to express their personal experiences both in and out of the classroom. My learning. Through teaching these students in this ABL course, I saw that all these transferable skills that you see here are connected, and you can't have one without the other. For example, the bridge between problem solving and communication, because in order to solve a problem, whether it be interpersonal or not, communication is key in order to getting your attention and goals across. All of these skills will be very beneficial to my future in the arts because it will aid me in being more aware of my community and how to communicate better. In addition, I saw the power of the arts and arts education and its impact on its students. It made them more confident and find a community each and every day. My future. This experience solidified my desire to work in the arts and pass on my knowledge of performing, writing, and creating and implementing an artistic vision to my students. As I prepare to graduate in May 2021, I look forward to pursuing a graduate degree in arts administration, internships in the field, a career with a nonprofit or arts organization, and hopefully finding a very rewarding job where I can give back to my community in that way. Action items. So right now, I am actively working with the Career Center on graduate school and internship plans, and I will continue to intern wherever I can to learn as much as I can. And next semester, I will start studying for the GRE, so I am ready to be in the fall. I'm ready to be a graduate student in the fall of 2021. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you all enjoy the other amazing presentations that we have here today. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience, Naya. You talked a lot about the emphasis on transferable skills that you gained from this experience. We love to hear that. How do you think that the lessons that you learned from this specific experience in theater will apply to areas outside of the arts as well?
I think that, can you guys hear me? Are we good? Yeah. Okay. I think that these transferable skills, working in theater, you have to be clear and concise and making sure people understand you and making sure whatever message you're trying to convey is being conveyed. And through this newer collaboration, we have to be very clear with our students and make sure that the message they wanted to convey was being conveyed.
Great. How do you think the arts can help us address the challenges we are seeing in our society today?
I think the arts as a whole is a bridge. So whether I'm, a girl from New York City or I'm a girl from Wyoming, the arts is a bridge between the two. And so we can use the arts in different ways and also expressing ourselves and our feelings. Sometimes there are no words to how we feel, good or bad, and the arts can give you those words and give you those tools.
Beautiful. That was a great question too. How has your study of French affected the way that you think about communication and working with others of different cultural and linguistic backgrounds? And you're the president of our French club here, right? If I remember correctly.
Yes, I am. French was always like a kind of a side love of mine, but then coming to Drew and being a French major, it really made me had to be very clear about what I wanted to say. Also think about what you say before you say it. And I feel that oftentimes in this climate, we kind of just blurt out whatever we want to say. But with French, you really do have to think about the tone and the wording that you're using. And also it helps me kind of communicate cross-culturally because it's not just France, there's 25 other Francophone speaking countries. So not only am I able to communicate with people and share my ideas, thoughts, and feelings to French people, but also people around the world.
Awesome. All right. I've got one last question for you before we wrap up things for today. What was your proudest moment during the NORC program?
Oh my goodness, there are so many proud moments. The students that I worked with were more talented at that age than I ever was. They were amazing. I think my proudest moment, we had a particular student. She never did theater before, was super nervous, was super concerned about writing her own piece because she chose to do that. And we helped her, but really, she really spearheaded it and led the way. And she did an amazing performance with us at the end of the semester. And she was phenomenal. I still have people coming up to me today, almost 2 years later, talking about her performance. And now she's about to go to college and do theater. And I was so happy that I was able to give her that experience. And it made me so, so, so proud. I'm still in touch with her today. She's amazing.
Oh, that's so great. We love to hear that and love that these connections are lasting beyond just the time that you are actually in the experience. So thank you so much for sharing, Naya. Thank you to all of our presenters who shared today. I am going to toss it over for our final closing and some next steps to Dr. Daniel Pasco Aguilar, our Associate Provost for Immersive Learning and Career Design.
Thank you, Megan. This is why I love what I do and why I could do it for the rest of my life. You all not only did a fantastic job with your presentations, you are clearly members of our greatly needed new generation of leaders. And you're already contributing in meaningful ways to the community and the world during such an important moment. So thank you. Participating students, these are fantastic experiences to learn from and to consider. There is a reason for which immersive experiences are part of Launch and the Drew experience. Think of this, immersive experiences are powerful ways of exploring paths, of developing skills, networks, and experience, of preparing for your future, and of contributing to your community and the world. And also keep in mind that according to the American Association of Colleges and Universities, 94% of recruiters are looking for candidates with meaningful experiences. They know their value. So make sure to follow up. Follow up on the experiences that called your attention. Think of the type of immersive experiences that motivated you the most today, or the type that could best fit your needs, and take the next step. Notice that for each type of experience, our immersive experiences fair page includes a link to the department that will help you get started with the opportunity that interests you. And if you have any questions or get stuck in any way, please email us at launch@drew.edu. Thank you so much, student presenters, Teresa, Jordan, Matthias, Kirsten, Gabby, Caitlin, Jannalise, Leah, Donghak, and Naya, and every other student who has recorded a presentation. You are truly an inspiration. Keep up the excellent work. And thank you, Immersive Experiences Fair Committee, Megan McHugh. You are a powerhouse. It's wonderful to see your leadership, and Amy Sugarman, Stacy Fisher, Jen Islam, Tanya Bennett. And thank you also to our Fair Technology and Communications team, Dan Lowry, Justin Jackson, Sean Spaventa, and Margaret Kiernan. I know you were working even late last night to make everything be ready and smooth. Your dedication and your work are impressive and moving. It's truly an honor to work with you. Everyone know that all presentations and the recording of this event will remain available for viewing at our Immersive Experiences Fair webpage that in which we've been interacting. And please keep in mind upcoming 2020 Launch Expo events. You can find them at launch.drew.edu. In particular, the Launch Communities Panel Series is underway. We have had 6 panels and we have still 12 to go. At a moment when interacting with others is complicated, this is a fantastic opportunity to learn from and connect with alums and other community members in careers that interest you or in communities with which you identify. Just to give you an idea, upcoming panels for the next couple of weeks are the Gender and Sexuality panel on October 6th at 7 p.m., the K-12 Education panel on October 8th at 7 p.m., and the Medicine and Health Professions panel on October 20th at 7 p.m. And also please keep in mind the Launch Communities Fair on October 23 from 3 to 6 p.m., at which by Launch Communities, you will be able to interact with student leaders, faculty, alums, staff, and employers about their experiences and the opportunities they facilitate related to any of the 18 career or identity communities that interest you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We are looking forward to seeing you in the rest of our 2020 Launch Expo. Congratulations, everyone. Fantastic job.